The devil has been linked to the Sphinx, Baphomet, the Goat of Mendes, the great god Pan of the Gnostics, and more. This is an archetype of both evil and enlightenment, with an esoteric meaning of disruption. Hello, I'm Michael J. Auger, creator of the Allcento Tarot, and today let's explore the 15th card of the Tarot's Major Arcana. The devil is known as a fallen angel who refused to bow to the creation of humanity and was therefore cast out of heaven, but granted power over a legion of demons to tempt and seduce with lies and falsehoods. The devil is also referred to as Satan, which is a word which means adversary or accuser, and is derived from the idea of opposition by way of active disruption. This mosaic, which dates back to the year 520 of the Common Era, illustrates a parable from the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus is seen in between two angels. To one side are sheep that are welcomed into heaven by a red-winged angel, most likely Michael, and to the other side are wolves that will be taken to hell by a blue-winged angel. According to historian Jeffrey Burton Russell, this blue-winged angel is the oldest depiction of the devil. Quite a different look from what this archetype later transformed into. The devil, depicted as a horned monster, was most likely influenced by ancient images of the god Pan and didn't occur until the Middle Ages. The gods of one religion become the devils of the next. One of the earliest versions of the devil as a monster is a full-page illustration from the Codex Gigas, which is considered the largest illuminated manuscript in the world, also known as the Devil's Bible. At the time the tarot was first being created, the devil had a minimal role in Christian theology and was used as a comic relief figure in mystery plays. He was thought of as mischievous rather than threatening. I personally believe the Visconti Sforza tarot decks originally included a devil card, but sadly, any examples have been lost to time. However, there are a few early examples of this card from the 1500s that still exist, thanks to discoveries of print sheets reused in book bindings. The Rothschild sheet includes the devil depicted as a man-eating monster with horns, wings, an extra face on his belly, goat legs, and bird claws as feet. The Carey sheet shows the devil with the trident pitchfork, wearing a basket on his back, which he uses to transport souls to hell. The Marseille-style version of this card depicts the devil with antlers instead of horns, and his trident has become a flaming torch. One arm is raised, and the other is lowered, and both male and female anatomy is included. Two additional figures have also been added with antlers, animal ears, and tails that match the devil. They are seen loosely bound to the devil's podium. And there's a strong similarity to the Pope card, which also depicts two additional characters below a main figure. When the tarot is viewed in repeating patterns of 10, the correspondence between the 5th card and the 15th becomes clear. The Pope, or Hierophant, disrupts our knowledge by teaching us that there's more than just the material. There's also the spiritual. This lesson is repeated by the devil using reverse psychology. The devil is a master of deception. If the disruptive spiritual wisdom of the Hierophant is rejected, then the devil agrees and lies to us that the material is all there is. He disrupts our path with temptations and addictions and allows himself to be used as a scapegoat so that we can remain trapped by our own failures and shortcomings. An illustration created by Eliphas Levi in 1856 of a sabbatic goat had a considerable impact on the understanding of this archetype. Levi's intention was to depict the Gnostic and alchemical ideas of synthesis with symbolism that represents the goal of a perfect social order. The flame between the horns of this creature signifies it as a bringer of light and knowledge of the metaphysical equilibrium between human and animal, man and woman, dark and light. The influence of Levi is clear when we look at the depiction of the devil card in the tarot created by Oswald Wirth. Similar to Levi, the arms bear the Latin words solve and coagula, which represents the alchemical process of dissolving and recombining that I discussed in a previous episode of Temperance. Wirth describes the devil as the one who incites us to wish to be like God, and then indicates the instinct which relates everything to themselves. The devil is certainly a disruptive and complicated character. The English secret societies were influenced by French occultists, and so the version of the devil card created by Arthur Edward Waite and Pamela Coleman Smith features a monster with one hand raised and the other lowered, similar to the devil of Levy and Wirth. However, instead of flames above the head, there is an inverted pentagram instead. The wings of this devil are also inverted, and even a flaming torch is being held upside down. Waite identified as Christian, and so he saw the devil not as a light bringer, but as the dweller on the threshold, who guards the entrance of the Garden of Eden after Adam and Eve were cast out. The imprisoned figures in this card echo the figures of Adam and Eve from Waite's Lover's card, but have regressed into a beastly state. Eve, who once stood before the tree of knowledge, now has horns and a tail that ends with a bunch of grapes to represent drunkenness. And Adam, who once stood before the tree of life, also has horns, and his tail ends in a flame to represent lust. The upraised hand of the devil is open to suggest that everything is revealed and the material is the only reality. This lie, that there is no spiritual mystery in life, is what keeps the figures below him trapped. Their actual bindings are loose, and they are able to escape, but until they disrupt the deception of the devil, they will remain trapped in the hell of their own self-made prison of overindulgence. And then there's the Thoth deck created by Aleister Crowley, with the artistic help of Lady Freda Harris. Crowley rejected the idea of any universal sense of morality. He saw the devil as a representation of masculine material energy in its most creative form, and said the card represents Pangenitor, the all-begetter. Crowley believed that this archetype symbolized finding pleasure and having complete appreciation and ecstasy for all existing things in the material world without casting judgment. At the center of this card, between the legs of the goat, is the wand of the chief adept of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which represents the evocation of spirit. The Golden Dawn linked this card with the zodiac sign of Capricorn, the goat, and the Hebrew letter Ayin, which means eye. The goat illustrated on this card has 3 eyes that symbolize a creative focus on material goals. This is a self-centered and extreme direction of ambitions. The goat stands on the highest mountaintop on earth, and in the background is a complex web of chaos and madness. The horns of the goat are spiraled, which bring to mind the spirals of the galaxies of space, and the DNA helix, which is the blueprint for life. The overall design in this card is a not-so-subtle phallus, the tip of which extends past the top of the card into the greater heavens, while the testicles at the bottom of the card contain the bound-up forms of 4 women on the left and 4 men on the right. The devil represents the Lord of the Gates of Matter, but this cannot be limited to simply a personification of wickedness, for if God is in everything, then the devil is God, but remains misunderstood by those who are ignorant and evil. And here's the devil as seen in the Allcento tarot. In this version, the devil appears as a monster with a split tongue, similar to the version in the Devil's Bible. He holds both a trident and lit torch, both facing downwards, at the 2 figures sitting before the stone altar on which he is perched. Their bindings are attached to an inverted 5-pointed star that represents a focus on the material and indicates that a disruption of illusion and trickery is necessary in order to progress out of the darkness. This arcana can be seen as a confrontation with our shadow self and is one of the darkest cards in the deck. It can represent a crisis of faith, often described as a dark night of the soul. Mythologist Joseph Campbell explained, "The dark night of the soul comes just before revelation. When everything is lost and all seems darkness, then comes the new life and all that is needed." The 2 figures below the devil have horns and tails, indicating they have been imprisoned in a state of delusion and bestiality, but their bindings are loose and self-imposed. Evil is the easy path of least resistance, and it's easier to blame the devil and remain enslaved than it is to face the truth. However, spiritual rewards await those with the strength to overcome their material addictions. This 15th card can be viewed as teaching the same spiritual lesson as the 5th card. However, unlike the Hierophant, the devil teaches us the hard way, using reverse psychology. In the Allcento Tarot, there are a total of 30 triumph cards. And so this 15th card is an important turning point that indicates we are halfway through our quest. I hope you'll continue this spiritual journey with me. And if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe. Also, don't forget to click that like button and leave a comment to show your support. And as always, you can find out more about me and the Allcento Tarot at my website, offbeatartwork.com. And until next time, brightest blessings on your spiritual journey.